First up, welcome everyone. Great to have you here for this panel on the future of work and AI. I want to say really thanks so much to the other panelists. Wonderful to have you here. Such a great mix of thought leaders on both digital and entrepreneurship in South Africa, as well as how these entrepreneurs are really supporting big business. So before, we're going to do a quick round of introductions and then do some housekeeping, and then we'll jump into the discussion. So myself, Alison Collier, I lead the team here at Endeavour in South Africa. And just wanted to say to the audience, the entrepreneurs, investors, and to all the business professionals out there, thanks so much for dialing in. Then the panelists around the table. So we've got two Endeavour entrepreneurs, Rapeleng Rabana and Ryan Falkenberg. So Rapeleng founded many businesses, including Rekindle Learning, and then most recently one that was launched last week, Forward Innovation. So she can talk to us a little bit more about that. And then Ryan plays in the tech space and having launched a number of businesses, with his latest being Clever, which is a SaaS play really with front office digital workers to support the back office RPA solutions that have come before. And then Luis Rodriguez, really appreciate you stepping in for Vukani. Thank you so much. Wonderful to have you here, the head of strategy for Accenture in Africa. And that also includes the digital and the AI space at Accenture. So thanks so much. So quick round of housekeeping before we get going. Everyone, please just put your questions into the chat bar, and we'll try and pick up some of the questions actually as we go, if they on topic related to the question that's just been posed, or else if there's a more general question that you want to ask any one of the panelists, please go ahead, put it into the sidebar, and we'll have 15 to 20 minutes at the end for questions. And then, so just keep them flowing. We want to keep the conversation quite light, but we've got a really structured way that we're thinking of talking through the topics. But please put your questions down, and then we'll get to them. Okay, so just to sort of kick us off on today's discussion, just to talk a little bit about the trends and what we're seeing. So really, why are we focusing and why are we having this discussion today? We've seen a huge amount of acceleration in the digitization and AI space over the past year, driven by the remote working and the COVID pandemic. And on one hand, that's led to a huge amount of upheaval and change, but I want to say for the medium-sized tech-enabled businesses, this has really created an amazing opportunity. We've seen such an increase in demand for their services. And I want to say, as Endeavour and the tech-enabled businesses that we work with in our portfolio, it's really been remarkable to see the speed at which these entrepreneurs have responded to this, pivoted or just really accelerated the delivery of their services out to the market. And just to maybe put that in numbers, what we've saw over the past 2 years is that these entrepreneurs have driven, on average, the revenue growth around 27%, but alongside that, the headcount growth has run at 29%. And just to explain the size of these businesses, they're around the 200 million rand mark. So these are not small businesses, they're medium-sized entrepreneurial businesses. But it's really encouraging, one, to see the growth continuing in spite of the difficult trading conditions in the last year. And two, I want to say to see the headcount growing at a faster clip than the revenue. So I think the underlying message there is that these tech-enabled businesses really drive productivity. They create jobs. They're different types of jobs to maybe what jobs have been before. But I think what we're seeing in the portfolio is it's an incredible opportunity for us, one as South Africa, and two as entrepreneurs and tech entrepreneurs to go out and leverage again. So very curious to hear more from the rest of the panel. So to start us off then, Luis, can I ask the first question to you?
You sure can.
So first up, again, thanks for joining us and really stepping in. But what I wanted to ask you is, first up, is with the work that you do at Accenture across Africa, you're one of the leading players in digital and the work of AI in the consulting space. So just wanted to ask you, this term AI, it gets thrown around. How would you define it for everyone, all of us in the room, to just make it easy to understand? And then the second piece, within the space, like what are the key successes where you've seen in big projects that you've delivered in the AI and digital space, and the impact that you've seen those projects have had on the local communities or that economy?
Thanks, Alison. Great question to start. And let me start by saying that, when thinking about defining things, I often talk about, I don't like to define things because it constrains them. I always put the example of love. You can't really define what love is, but let me give it a go nevertheless. So to us, artificial intelligence is actually part of something bigger, that we have our own version of it that we call applied intelligence. And you might ask, well, okay, so now it's not artificial intelligence, now it's applied intelligence. What do you mean by applied intelligence? So in a nutshell, for us, applied intelligence is about a smarter, faster, and more effective approach to collecting, processing, analyzing data, creating insights that help us identify opportunities to act on, and automating those actions to unlock business value. And it's basically made up of what we believe are kind of we call the 3 A's. The first one is analytics. The second one is artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is something for us is part of a bigger thing. And then the third thing is automation, which I think those 3 kind of components, a lot has to do with, for example, what Ryan does. One key thing that I want to raise is important is that we don't really see this, whether you talk about artificial intelligence or in our case, applied intelligence, being driven in isolation. It has to be embedded in the whole organization and paired with industry skills and capabilities, functional skills, design, innovation, etc. I mean, at Accenture, we recently changed our operating model because this part of Accenture was kind of in a silo, and we weren't able to make the impact on our clients that we wanted to. And now we have it a lot more intertwined with the rest of us. Another example I wanted to give is that our CEO just went public not long ago around the importance of this for all of us. And this year, in her main scorecard, it is about getting everybody in Accenture trained in key technology topics, and artificial intelligence is one of them. So the only way that she's going to get her, and we're all going to get our bonus, hopefully, is that if everybody in Accenture, 500,000 employees, is actually trained on artificial intelligence. And I think that tells you how important it is for us. I mean, we were having a chat with the MDs around the globe, and we saw her scorecard, and it's there. There's other things that are extremely important, for example, diversity, and it's great to see that. But to me, seeing something like digital, new technologies, and artificial intelligence, and having 100% of our people trained and certified gives a sign of how important it is for us. Now let's go to the interesting stuff and the examples. The first one that I want to talk about is an energy company, which saw that they had a big opportunity around repairing cost of machinery and downtime. We use Deep Forest to kind of develop a machine learning model to continuously learn and improve how maintenance is done. Sounds pretty obvious, pretty straightforward. The key part is that you can get the model, but a key part of what we did is not just develop the model, but make sure that the model is embraced by people. Because one thing that we have to be very aware of is that this does not really get done and implemented, and you don't see the benefits if it's not really embraced by people. So a lot of the time was actually spent trying to understand what were the motivations and opportunities around specific individuals. So take the model that makes maintenance better, but what drives actually the behavior of the people that are actually doing the maintenance? And we spent a lot of time doing that. At the end, the solution, great results in terms of, getting to that uptime, and also a great job satisfaction on the people that were actually doing the maintenance. They were actually happier doing it. So there was a big impact on the cost side, on the uptime of the machine, but a big satisfaction around the people that were actually doing the maintenance. The last thing that I want to add is that this energy company actually created a whole division to do this at a scale within their organization, which of course meant, creation of new jobs. And I think this is a key point that we'll have to embrace, is that artificial intelligence is not about job losses. Just some jobs will disappear. But actually, we do believe that more will be created, and a lot of them will be enhanced and augmented. The second example is around a financial services entity. And here the issue is that they were seeing a huge outflow of funds. Seems like a very traditional problem. Now in here, the challenge is how do we use artificial intelligence and digital to help people, the clients and the advisors, to make the right decisions, to make sure that they are increasing contributions, that they're not taking their money out when they switch jobs or when they retire prior. So we use digital and we use artificial intelligence to create better decision-making for people. And again, here's the focus on people and two kinds of people. The advisors that we're having conversation in some cases with customers and customers themselves. And the impact on decision-making and it's been phenomenal. And there was a kind of a belief within our client that there were a lot of people that were just making bad decisions because they had to. And in reality, it's not because they had to, it's just because there were nobody there to help them. And digital and artificial intelligence help us do that.
No, and I want to say I couldn't agree with you more on that point that the job, they're going to be, different jobs, they're going to be higher value add jobs and jobs that actually are more satisfying for individuals too, because with better information, you as an individual, everyone's looking to do well. Like everyone is sitting there looking to perform. And if you've got better information that's more real time, you're better positioned to perform in your role, and then you can go on and do better things. So it's just, yes, things are going to be different. Some of these roles will fall away, but many more will be created. And I think the upside of the better information and therefore being able to fulfill your role more effectively, it's very rewarding. So no, but it's interesting to see the breadth of the application. I mean, it's just, and I love hearing that everyone at Accenture, it's just how we work. We need to work in a digital manner. It doesn't matter who you are. So, and I think that's completely right. No, thanks so much for that. So Ryan, over to you, the founder and CEO or co-founder and CEO of Clever. Maybe first, just for the audience, tell us a little bit more about Clever, and then specifically how your customers leverage the digital experts that you offer in your Clever solution with their customers' sales and service channels.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. I mean, I've been on a real journey. I think Clever is the culmination of about a 20-year journey. In fact, I left more than 20 years ago Accenture, interestingly enough, and started a company called High Performance Learning, which was part of the first Endeavor companies. And one of the focuses I had back then was this obsession really of trying to get people to stop going to classrooms. I hated sitting in classrooms and having my brain coded with boring stuff. And what I realized in companies is that most work, actually, it's why we call it work, is the replication of boring stuff, which is I get coded on a product or a policy or a procedure. It's a formula. And what I do is I come to a company, they upload that formula into my head using training, and they then send me out to apply that formula. Really, I become like a flesh-covered robot. And I was kind of very interested in this. How do we rehumanize the workforce? Because so much of work is dehumanizing. It's replication. All I can do is make a mistake. And actually, the me part of it is gone. My performance is based on the success of me applying a predetermined outcome in context. And what I realized is how poor my brain particularly was in uploading this content and then remembering it and then applying it accurately. And I started to question, why are we doing this to people? And so we, in High Performance Learning at the time, we were looking at how to get people out of classrooms and to learn through learn rapid learning models, etc. And so my focus then was how to code the brain quicker so that I could get performing better. So it was really performance-based learning. And that was exciting because we started to get real traction in the banks and in the telcos, etc. But what I still realized is that even after this amazing acceleration of learning and people performing, people were miserable. And 6 months later, they actually often were not in a great place. And when I recall having interviews with people, and they really hated their job and they felt completely overwhelmed. And I thought we were doing a great job with skilling them. But actually, I realized that the better we were training them, the worse we were making it, because they were operating in an increasingly complex world where data was moving, the decision rules were changing. And so every time their brain fixed on a form of code, they were getting sent an email to unvelcro that and revelcro the latest version. And so we were actually creating change-resistant human beings that were exhausted by the very concept of change. And so I started to ask the question, why are we even asking the human brain to do replication work? It's dehumanizing. It's not where we're good. And couldn't we start unlocking the human spirit and getting people to do stuff that they really love doing and they're good at doing and they can add value, rather than ask them to do the replication? And so that's where I got interested in this concept of digital experts and digital workers. Could we not hand that boring stuff over to a digital alternative and liberate people to do more interesting work? So what we started to explore was, how's that possible? And most companies or people operate in legacy environments. There's systems, there's processes, there's the as-is. And so the first part of the interest was seeing how they were using digital workers, which is RPA, to do the system work, the capturing of stuff into operating systems, so that people didn't have to do that. That was really where it all started. But what we were struggling with was the logic that didn't sit in systems. It sat in experts' heads. For example, if you have a sales conversation with a financial advisor, what the questions they ask, the answers they give, that's all sitting in their head. And what I got fascinated about is, how do you extract that logic? You can't get AI to do it because it's sitting in a non-data form. It's sitting in a human brain. And so what we then got focused on is, how do you build digital experts, the sales, the support, the technical people that we can then scale and give over the replication logic to a digital expert and get people working. So that's really where Clever started, is the problem statement of how do you do that? We built a technology that allowed low coding teams to very quickly extract that logic by just fundamentally changing the way we extract logic. We stopped asking experts how they think, because I don't think in Visio and I don't think in documents. I think in multi-dimensional ways. So we started to ask them questions like, what are the variables you would consider in the situation? What are all the factors? What are the possible outcomes? And so we found a way of very quickly extracting the data points that they use in decision making, and then using our technology to replicate how their brain makes decisions in a consistent, very compliant, but highly contextually relevant way. And so what that started allowing us to do is to give customers access to a digital expert via their chatbots, their websites, their mobile apps, so that they could get stuff done without having to talk to a human who's just going to replicate. But also we started to then give this digital expert straight to contact center agents, for example, and sales teams, so that they didn't have to be trained on what questions to ask and all of that. What they were good at was customer experience, the EQ stuff, the warm and fuzzy. And what they then relied on was the digital expert to navigate them through the complexity of that sale in a way that the company wanted them to do it. And what we started to pick up is that people started to get really good at the human stuff. They were able to multitask, do way more work, because they were focusing on what they were brilliant at. And we were able to then get the replication and scale because we had digitized the expertise. And so that's really what Clever does. It works in contact centers, it works in banks, insurers, telcos, where we essentially build a digital expert and offer that direct to customers and offer that to staff, so that they don't have to worry about products, policies, procedures, all that stuff, which they're only going to mess up anyway. What they can focus on is innovation, creativity, ideation, customer engagement. So that's been our passion, and that's really what we love doing, is liberating humans by embracing digital expertise and digital workforces.
No, I want to say that's I want to say it really builds nicely on what Lewis was sharing, that actually people are able to then focus on the work that we enjoy, that we do best, and they've got more of the information more readily available and more accurately in order to fulfill their jobs more effectively. So just specifically in the insurance space where you guys as Clever are focusing now, if you look at, say, the sales or customer sales and service guys that were working in those areas before, your Clever solution came along, and now that they are, the Clever solution is fully deployed across their team, what does that team look like before and after? And I don't know, maybe you can just give us a sense of the org structure, and then also you've spoken a little bit about the activities, but maybe just a bit more.
Okay, so let's take, for example, underwriting and commercial underwriting. You go into a building and you want to have that analyzed. What we were essentially introduced to were people who, at pretty much minimum, had 10 to 20 years experience in doing just commercial underwriting, very experienced people. And then there was this gap and then you had junior people who really struggled to do all of that, because the challenge came in the questioning. You go to a building, you've got to know that if this building is so many floors in this particular area and this, you need to check this. It is explosive in terms of the diagnostic logic. So we then worked with the actuaries and the underwriters to essentially replicate the logic they use in any context to do that. And once we had done that, we could then hook that digital expert into an underwriting platform so that the digital expert would navigate a junior person on site through a complex analysis, and they would essentially be guided through that. And based on any of the contextual answers, they would make sure that all the rules were applied. They did consider all the variables. It would then be automatically sent to an underwriting system and come back with a quote. So they didn't have to be the experts anymore. They could, in fact, just be very good at, again, the customer engagement. So what that changed was the architecture of the teams. They didn't have to have this hugely costly overhead of very expensive bottleneck underwriters who kept turning the juniors away and saying, but you forgot to ask this, go back to the customer, you didn't get that. What starts happening is that you have empowered frontline teams who can actually go and do more work because they are not messing it up and they're getting it accurate. The same in terms of in contact centers, think of claims. I phone with a claim. Well, depending on the situation, my policy, all the rules, I can tell you whether you can claim or not, or you can get pre-authorization or dental pre-authorization. I've never realized how complicated dental pre-authorization is until we started to build that technology. And suddenly now an agent doesn't need to mess up and know that if you didn't have this policy and you were 15 or what the digital expert does is it navigates them through that. So now, instead of getting dental experts, or in the one case we were amazed, they had ICU nurses on contact center seats because they had to do diagnostics of very complex queries because they knew the medical terms. We could now get a young person who's got multicultural, multilingual background, who's got a fantastic personality, to be offering the level of diagnostics of an ICU nurse without messing it up, because they could just simply be an exceptional customer service person. So those are the types of transformations, is that you can then start giving everybody access to expertise, as opposed to keeping it with very few people and creating bottlenecks. You can bring the expertise into the front line, but more importantly, you can give expertise direct to customers. So they don't have to find the expert in your company to answer the question. They can instantly access a digital expert that has the intelligence to ask all the relevant questions and give them an answer that then can be executed instantly. And I think that's what's changing in companies, is that the expertise is sitting in little pockets, and the processes all lead. They try as much as possible get the process solved before, damn it, we have to get to third tier or whatever to the expert, very expensive resolution. We now are able to capture that and bring it right up front, and then rather keep the interface to customer as people who specialize in customer experience, rather than the expertise that was almost a ticket to the game before they could get there. So that's what we're seeing in organizations, is this amazing potential of now flattening of structures and not having these experts, all roads leading to them, but rather bringing expertise directly into the first tier.
No, it's great. And I think that gives a lovely segue across to Rappeling and a lot about the first business that you set up before we talk about your second one. But Ryan, I mean, to me, what's so exciting and what you've expressed as well as Lewis is that with digital advances and the use of AI, it just makes the workplace so much more accessible for younger employees because you're getting the support and the knowledge of all these complicated rules and compliance items that's being handled through the digital solution. And then you can then rely on that for the complexities and then engage at a human level with the individual. So it really helps to upskill workers and teams like enormously quickly. But Rappeling, over to you. And I want to say, like Ryan, a serial tech entrepreneur, wonderful to have you in the room and also great to have you in the Endeavour community. Just first up, wanted to for you to share a little bit more about Rekindle Learning before you go into your second business, Forward Innovation, but really talking about the continuous learning, the employee engagement and greater productivity that was the reason for Rekindle Learning's being. And just if you can talk through some examples of you seeing that like in practice and how it's changed people and businesses.
Sure. Thanks so much for the platform. And I miss being part of the Endeavour community. So great to be reconnected. I think, Ryan and I started in sort of similar places in a way, frustrated with the traditional e-learning approach, or what I sort of refer to as first generation e-learning solutions. And, from there, we sort of saw different problems that we went to solve. So I think really what I wanted to play in with Rekindle Learning was that instead of essentially trying to convert what was done offline into an online experience by just putting stuff online in the similar format that one might have experienced before, and not necessarily translating the learning experience to be more efficient and easier to do and comparable to our other mobile learning or mobile interactions on our phone. And so Rekindle Learning was really birthed on the idea that learning should be as accessible and easy to consume as engaging on your Instagram or your LinkedIn or your emails. And that really translates into your bite-sized interactive learning, very little passive engagement, much like you're always interacting with liking or commenting and things like that on various other platforms. So what that ultimately means is that companies can repackage what might be their internal work principles or practices. Perhaps you launch a new digital strategy this year. Most companies will have a town hall, and then you kind of hope everyone's gotten onto that. But the real way to sort of make sure that people have engaged with these concepts, your customer service philosophy, etc., is to provide that one-on-one engagement. So instead of sending out an email memo or sort of just some slides, it's like, let's actually do a lot of the questioning and answering around what would be your most sort of pertinent questions you want to answer around this. So in sort of reference to the work that Ryan and Clever would do, a lot of this is more in the what and why are we doing this? And then, when you get into, all right, we've learned about what phase is, why the bank is doing this, why we're transforming into a financial services institution, etc. Then there's the process of, okay, what is the phase process when I interact with a client? So this is where I see, the complementary nature in terms of what Clever does, and still hoping to do more work with Clever over time too. And when you've covered the what and why, then the how is also more enjoyable or easier to do too, because you actually understand the subject matter of what you're talking about, and the Clevers can do the detailed of the how. So in other cases, it's really also a change management mechanism. So when you are doing a major change in your sales strategy or transformation strategy, again, you can have your rah-rah sessions that get everyone excited about it. But how well do they understand it? How well can you assess whether people have engaged with these topics or ideas, etc., is really where we're sort of seeing that, so that it's a more of a two-way ongoing engagement with your employees. And over and above the sort of short micro insights and learnings that you can share, there's still an opportunity for people in their various departments and teams to be able to discuss, ask questions. So we've been looking at this new sales product or whatever else is that we need to take to market. How have your guys been experienced been? Who's done sort of the most sales on this? How do you continue the learning and integrate it into what you do when you go back into the shop or the branch, so that, you know, you can circle back and still do those reflections? So really getting into sort of that what and why. And the other really powerful thing that we've seen with this bite-sized learning approach is that when people come from a very poor or lower educational background where they didn't do well in school or they didn't get very far, it's very hard, or it's difficult to buy into trying to upskill yourself, going through these thicker books or etc. else's and trying to figure out what, you know, to do even in plumbing or renewable energy artisans that we've worked with. And people there would have typically, been very reluctant to actually read any of the material on renewable energies, for example. But putting it into the micro-learning format suddenly made it a lot more accessible, and they weren't overwhelmed with lots of reading. And the fact that it's a coaching app, asking you questions, giving you corrective feedback, focusing on your weak areas until you demonstrate that mastery, sort of helps people feel like, okay, there's someone to get me through this and I'm not being penalized for getting things wrong. So just shifting that mentality from the school format where you read a lot and you were tested at the end of the quarter. Now it's questions are actually part of my learning, and me not knowing isn't a problem. I've got feedback and guidance from there, and now I can, you know, self-correct and build. And that opportunity to give people a chance to master and get good at something really changes that level of confidence that they can build in whatever work they're in. So this is everyone from an artisan doing plumbing or renewable energy technologies, where we've worked with our IPP partners and the TVETs they work with, to your young person going into financial services, etc., who, you know, will probably encounter the clevers too. And how do they build domain expertise and knowledge in that space? So yeah, it's been an incredible journey. And I think, you know, microlearning was not a concept that was very popular 5 years ago, but finally it's really catching on. We've seen a number of startups in the US raise significant amount of money now in the space of microlearning. And it all comes to, how do you package critical internal organizational knowledge and insights and systematically share them with your people, and give them an opportunity to engage, consume, and actually understand it, so that it's not sort of just one-way information transfers, and people can really grapple with what's happening in the business.
No, fantastic. And I also think within micro-learning, it's just such a wonderful culture of building that curiosity culture. And you ask a question in micro-learning, it's good to ask questions, and it's okay if, like, you don't know the answer. And the faster and the more that we have, the faster the world changes around us, the more you need to have that type of mindset in order to succeed. So it's it's wonderful, and that works for us all.
Before I lose my train of thought again, so the other element that we've been stepping into is that, so the microlearning has shown us that there's a more powerful way to do principle-based or knowledge-based learning. And now we're sort of expanding more into how do you then supplement that with your practical learning capabilities. So when you're doing a cloud hosting course, it's easy. You can spin out a AWS instance and apply your learning that you've done there, etc. But when you're working with artisans or technicians or people that do your telco networks, etc., virtual reality is sort of the proxy for that. And now combining the micro-learning with the VR experiences, you can, you know, dematerialize that whole process, and you don't have to wait for people to get to a site to Midrand to actually see what these towers are about and what they would do with what equipment. And slowly now that VR costs are also coming down and companies are more open and more willing to put down, you know, the effort and resources there, we're luckily been doing some very, very cool pilots in that space so that we can do the entire journey for the learning.
Nice. And I want to say I'm so impressed at how quickly this different way of learning through technology is picked up once there are a few early adopters in an organization. It's wonderful to see. So well done. And I'm definitely going to keep watching that space. Then Ryan, just moving across back to you, just wanted to build on a little bit more of those comments that you mentioned earlier about how the digital technologies and the AI solutions that you are putting forward into the workspace is really changing the nature of the work and really opening up such different opportunities for the businesses and also to the individuals. It's got many direct and indirect benefits. And so I just wanted to say, like, more broadly, like, what are the common benefits that you're seeing to this, and sort of building on what you were mentioning earlier, and specifically like emphasizing on that human perspective. Like, what is the new workspace going to look like? So you alluded to flatter organizations, but I'm sure there's a lot more. So
yeah, it's an interesting process. I mean, I think we're still on our journey to discovery on that. At the moment, a lot of our work is almost taking off the handcuffs of people. So and once they are free, they're going to start seeing the value. I think so much of our work again is tied into replication and processes and rules. And what I think phase one is all about is handing that over. So while we are, we've had non-integrated legacy systems where my job as a person was to take data from this system and act like an integrator and put it into that system, or to ask a customer for some data and put it into the system. So actually my job was really to connect things, and then the rest happened. Or gather information again and then put it into systems. What's increasingly happening as it becomes more digital is the information gathering roles, the integration roles are being taken over by digital workforces. And that's actually exposing all of us, because what suddenly is your value if you've been paid, let's say, again, for your replication capability? You can even think of it as a doctor and how many decisions doctors make that are purely replication of what has been predetermined for them. The way they diagnose a disease, what they treat them with is prescribed to them. There's not this magic formula they're applying often. They are doing a very high level decision-making and execution. And so as digital replication of that starts happening, all of us are going to have to ask the question, okay, so if what I was valued for was what I had learned from the past, in other words, I would study at a degree and learn historical formulas. And those historical formulas were valuable, and I could charge a premium because I knew those formulas. And very few other people knew the formulas or understood them. So I could hold on and charge a premium for as long as I could replicate those formulas and other people couldn't. What's now starting to happen is that as soon as a formula is understood, we can digitize that quicker. And so my leverage as a human being of holding on to that is far, far shorter. And so again, if I go back to the education system, our entire education system is backward looking. All we do is we teach people what we've already known. So we teach what society has already worked out. And so my children sit in class getting yabbered to by some educator who tells them what somebody already worked out. And their job is to just learn it and give it back to them so that they have worked out what someone else worked out. The leverage on that is so small, because if it's worked out, digital intelligence is going to do it. What actually the human race's future is forward-looking, is learning should be about what we don't know. In fact, I should go on a course on a challenge that nobody understands. And the course is for me to work it out. That actually is what learning is about, is learning new constructs, not historical constructs. And so what we're going to start finding is that as soon as it's known, so let's take businesses. One of our biggest challenges as SMEs is scaling. Why? Because the founder knows the formula, but damn it, these people just don't learn it. And they screw it up all the time. And every time I give it to them, they don't do it quite like me. Well, increasingly, you're going to get access to digital intelligence that can allow you to replicate what you know and scale it. And so you won't be hiring people to do what you already know. What you're going to hire them to do is to bring stuff that you don't know. So that's where you'll pay them, is for the value of the future, not of the past. And so I think it's fundamental, is that like for my children, they're going to be vulnerable if they feel confidence in any replication model. What I keep asking them is, what are you bringing to the table here? What new stuff are you bringing? What aspect of your personality is valuable? What aspect of your knowledge or your creativity or your thinking because that's what you're going to get paid for. That's the premium I will pay you, is what you can bring to me, not what I can bring to you, and you just go and replicate. And I think that's what I'm finding interesting and somewhat disconcerting in a way about when we talk about jobs. I think jobs are going to get hammered, but they're the jobs that I want to hammer because they're boring. They destroy people's confidence. They make people feel stupid. They're always getting it wrong. They're always screwing things up. Why don't we just get digital experts to do that and say, that's not why I'm employing you. I'm employing you because I noticed you've got an unbelievable way with people. You can talk 5 languages. You've got an incredible EQ capability, and I need you to actually get very good at sales engagements. Or I just know you are exceptional good at ideation and creativity, and so you bring new value into my business. I'm going to pay you for that. And so that is where I think the opportunity is. Unfortunately, our educators are still hooked on the past. Because they are essentially packaging the past, and they're packaging it in suite of formats. The future is that there is no packaging, because that we don't know what it is. It's packaging the problem. So I believe the future of intelligence, in human intelligence, is not what you know. It's not the answers you give. It's the questions you ask. It's the ability to unpack things and work out new things. So highly intelligent people will ask better questions. And at school currently, my children aren't allowed to ask questions. They are just asked to get the answers back. And so they are made to be non-intelligent. And that's what I just think is where we are hitting massive paradigm opportunities, is that both what we consider is intelligent, I believe is going to fundamentally change. And it'll only change once digital experts and digital workers take away that crap work from us and allow us, give us time, and our brains time, and the terrifying view that I'm now getting paid. What am I going to get paid for? Because it's not the doing part anymore. Man, I better get onto Rekindle and start learning very quickly, because learning is going to become a life skill. It's going to be rapid. It's going to be constant. And I'm going to constantly have to be agile in adding new value, as opposed to coming to work because I'm an accountant. I know the formula of accounting, and I've studied so many years, and so you're going to pay me a premium for that. That's gone, I believe. I think those models are history. It's going to be a lot more challenging for all of us to stay relevant. And therein lies the opportunity for learning, but it's not in the replication space.
No, I want to say, absolutely. It's scary, but at the same time, exciting. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we as humans are here to do. We're not here to do robotic, keep repeating the same task, keep regurgitating the same thing. It's much more exciting, but like anything change, it's a little bit scary at first. And then after you've been doing it for a while, it's like the new normal. So I want to say that was a really great summary. So thanks so much, Ryan. Just a quick one for the audience. If you've got questions for anyone, please put them down in the chat. And then we'll get through to them. I haven't seen any, I haven't looked across at the chat, but I don't see any there right now. So if there's anything you'd like to ask, please put it there. But then back to you, Rapeleng. And I want to say, just on this topic of learning, on this topic of being agile, I mean, the past year with the pandemic that we've had, so many businesses have been turned upside down. All of us have needed to do things very, very differently. And I would say yourself as a business leader and entrepreneur, I'm sure the same is for you. I think one of your responses was to create another business, but I'll leave it to you just to tell us how and what you did because of the big change in the external factors. And then secondly, what are the key AI trends that you're seeing that are going to have impact over and above this? So one is like the big change, and then secondly, what are you seeing from the perspective of AI?
Sure. Yeah. Very big and broad questions there. So let's start at the beginning of that. So for me personally, in terms of the changes, I must say that the whole startup life for the last 15 years has more than prepared us for COVID life, and our proficiency with all kinds of tools that we can use is actually will make the transition easy. And in fact, it was a bonus because now clients started to take virtual meetings seriously, what we had been begging them to do for years already, instead of us schlepping around all over for a 30-minute update meeting. So in that sense, I think it was actually fantastic. But obviously, many businesses sort of had a huge challenge in that space. And part of ultimately setting up Fast Forward Innovation was I just got increasingly more and more frustrated and overwhelmed around having to address things that I think that were very simple to address in a company, and not having a systematic process around doing that. So for example, even with this COVID shift right now, a lot of people will complain that their days became 18-hour days now that they were at home and they didn't have this free time. And they were on calls and after calls after calls. And the root cause of that is primarily because they hadn't designed an employee experience that allowed you to use the collaboration tools that are available properly. So even if you have a Teams, you probably weren't using it in teams and projects to actually work on stuff. And if you are using those tools well, whether it's a Slack and Trello's and everything, and there's greater transparency of information, there's real-time ways to engage with your staff without having to ask for a meeting, you will find that you don't need as many calls. I think a lot of meetings in big companies is a meeting to get information, which should be transparent if you're already working in a collaborative, productive way. So, you know, those kinds of learnings and insights that were just so intuitive for me, but very difficult for people to grasp. And it continues to baffle me, but I was like, okay, if that's what people need, fine. And now, you know, the whole thing with Fast Forward, with COVID's change and everything on business models, you know, companies were at the point where, all right, we've got some ideas to trial. Some of them have already spent 10 million rands on it, and they come back and they still no ROI. Actually, let's help people think through the metrics you need to be looking at and the thinking you need to be having when you innovate new things. Because again, I was so sad and frustrated with having to sit with someone 2 million rands into the bond or 10 million rands into the budget and still without a product. Because, you know, you haven't figured out the assumptions you need to test for and the process, and there hasn't been any rapid prototyping or anything like that. So we found with COVID that demand increased more and more, that you needed a way to do a strategy validation and not just a document. So even if you've got a new marketing strategy, before you go and deploy that 5 million rands, have you validated it in a 3 to 5 day sprint? Have you validated your new product innovation? Have you validated your new sales tactics that you want to apply, etc.? And that was, you know, the gap that opened up. And eventually, you know, I was like, okay, let's do this, because it's great for me if companies ultimately become more digitally proficient, because then, you know, they're also more interested in things like Rekindle Learning, in things like Clever and every other tech startup out there. And I'd hope, you know, companies would get there on their own, but seemingly, yeah, it's not quite there yet. And in terms of AI, what I really sort of see playing out is that, on simple terms, AI and machine learning and all the data analytics we're doing, you know, we move from the point where it's from visualization to diagnosing problems to predicting what will happen in future and, you know, deciding what the best decision will be, and different degrees of AI and all of that. But fundamentally for me, I look at it as, we're going to have greater capacity to make better decisions because we'll be more informed, because we can collect more data, because we can visualize more information, because we can diagnose more problems faster, because we can predict what will happen in future. So fundamentally, it's better decision making. It'll also allow us to do more things. So in the manufacturing examples, even that Louis mentioned and the like, being able to have IoT devices and all the data that they collect for you to figure out, you know, what machine needs to do what, how much stock do you need here and there, your ability to produce more suddenly increases just by having, you know, those right information points. So the ability to do more, for me, is another way to look at it, especially when you use IoT stuff in there. And I think there's also going to be a lot of human benefits in the sense that we will actually be able to, when you look at all the cool things around embedded sensors and all of those things, there's stuff that allows you to expand your senses. So people that are blind, having access to, you know, glasses you put on that can pick up motion movement and be able to signal back to you what's happening. I mean, one of these tools, it gives you like ripples on your skin depending on what's happening. So our ability to see and hear and listen more and observe more will become also more pronounced by all these additional data points we can get in the AI that helps us interpret what is actually happening. So I think there's going to be a lot of positivity around those angles there to increase our capacity as human beings to perform.
No, I want to say exactly. And I'm also just, last question is very curious to know or understand what interesting startups you see that are coming up in the space, preferably South African, but you know, of course, over and above fast forward innovation that you've recently started. But I don't know what's caught your eye.
Probably the agri-tech space has really fascinated me a lot. And this was an industry that had so little data in terms of what was happening. There's a farm in rural, God knows where, and no one knows how well he's running his farm. No one can see how well, you know, his crops are growing, when the yield will arrive, which has a knock-on effect, because if you have no data, you can't design insurance products, you can't design financial services, you can't commit to a distributor in terms of when you'll deliver. So startups like Aerobotics, which I think they raised quite a significant chunk of money from Naspers Foundry last year, have done so much to solve that data paucity and provide transparency and ability to perceive what's happening for smallholder farmers around the country, where through the drones they fly over, through the satellite imaging that they get, they're able to see, you know, that your stuff isn't getting enough nutrients or there's pests or something like that, and be able to use the AI to predict when, you know, your yield will arrive, which can better inform your distributor or aggregator, whoever you're selling to, when your produce is arriving, which means that more smaller farmers can participate in that ecosystem because they can provide a retailer or distributor with the level of transparency they need. So that kind of stuff, yeah, I think is so exciting in terms of what's happening in that sector.
No, I agree. And there's so much upside in that space to enhance productivity. And it's one through just awareness of the yield, but also on the other hand, just awareness of the problems in different crops. And then you can quickly address them, and you're not, you know, just going for it and pesticiding the entire field or putting a huge amount of fertilizer on when you actually only need it in one specific area. So I think the productivity gains we're going to see in farming with this accelerated or just improved information is going to be very exciting to see. So yeah, thanks.
I see Louis had a question or comment. Shame, we keep interrupting him.
No. I was gonna do it before because listen, I think I've been fascinated by your responses and Ryan's, and there's a few things that kind of spark. So before I want to start with the next question, I wanted to comment on it, but I can wait. I can definitely wait.
No, go for it.
So on the first one on micro learning and that, I mean, the example that I made around Accenture and 500,000 people learning about artificial intelligence, it's of course micro learning, right? And we are seeing that we are applying it to this, but I think it's going to be applied to everything. And then back on the last question that you made around, you know, where are you seeing this? I think besides the usual applying it to the B2C space, I think one area in which we are seeing a lot of additional demand is on the B2B space. And I think a lot of digital and artificial intelligence was kind of more heavily exposed towards the business to consumer industries. We are seeing a lot now on the B2B space.
No, it's a really interesting shift. And I want to say, I think once that shift starts, then it just accelerates. So it's going to, let's see. But I don't know, Ryan, if you've got a comment that you want to make, or Raphael, otherwise I'll just...
To support that, I mean, what I find interesting is probably 3-4 years ago, if you were bringing some form of automation or AI to a business environment, you essentially were trying to apply technology in a very disconnected ecosystem, and it was fraught with challenges, and hence there was absolute skepticism. ROIs were not great. Lots of massive promises, very poor execution in reality. What I've seen change, though, is that just like historically we had ERP technologies that brought in these integrated operating systems, I'm starting to see these AI-enabled ecosystems starting to emerge that are offering companies that are fairly small even access to incredible integrated technologies that allow them to do stuff that is really amazing, that now the ball is starting to roll, and it's becoming mainstream. And so as opposed to doing an AI project on the side, I'm almost seeing this intelligence emerging into technologies, into ecosystems. It's not being done on top of, it's not being done to the side, it's being blended inside. And increasingly, it's going to become an absolute given. It's going to become a mainstream component. And it's just the same, you know, it happens very slowly and then it happens very fast. And I remember 10 years ago talking to, talk about resilience in entrepreneurship, but this, you know, 7 years ago, I was talking to people about this, and it was just very hard, shall I say. Now there are accessible ecosystems, and it's becoming mainstream. And it's a bit like, again, you know, the COVID thing. It's impossible to work in terms of a distance model, remote model. 18 months later, it's the only way to work. And these things, as I said, move very quickly suddenly. And I believe that in this space, it's the shift starting to happen. You know, I was just on a call with a partner in Germany, with a bank there, and you know, they're looking to downsize by 10,000 people over the next 3 years. And they've been steadily closing branches without saying much. And why they were doing it is because everyone's sitting in their house. And before, everyone was incredibly resistant. They'd go berserk if they didn't have their local branch there. But now they're just shutting them down. And because people are at home, they don't even know they're being shut down, but they're carrying on operating, and they are doing online banking. So without these people knowing it, they've become digital. And suddenly when COVID's over, those branches don't exist, but they've changed their behavior. And now they accept this as normal. And I think what's going to start happening quite quickly is that what we assumed were all the barriers to entry and the barriers to us becoming a lot more digital and a lot more transformed in our organizations, I think suddenly are going to become very mainstream a lot quicker than I thought. And I must say, I'm so delighted that the day has come that actually we can stop the naysayers, and we can actually now start building ecosystems that work together, that give us the tool sets and the capability to really start bringing to the market totally different business models, totally different ideas, scaling far quicker than we could have ever imagined, getting ideation going and rapid feedback models. That's what AI brings, is the ability to learn at exponential levels. And I believe, to end off, I think this is going to become not a side division. You've got your little AI guys and they do a little bit of robotics on the side, but you've got then your main business. To Louis' point, it's going to become part of what all of us do, and it's going to be part of our ecosystem. And so I think there's a real exciting opportunity to be part of that journey and to reshape organizations to that future. So yeah, I'm extremely excited by where this has finally arrived.
No, and also what we're seeing more and more with the cost of technology coming down so much because of cloud, because of all these different ways that you can access it, that this is no longer just something for the biggest and largest companies. These are things that, you know, everyone has kind of access to, because you just access it via the cloud, you access it in small pieces, and then the cost is not prohibitive. So same concept as the bite-sized learning.
Yeah, you know, as you were talking, it made me laugh, because when we first started Yego in 2006, we bought our first HP server for 70,000 rands and put it into Hertz, no, IS, I can't remember what it was back in the day. And we had to go and keep nursing this thing when it shuts down and does stuff. And after that, we were like, no, we're not touching another server again. AWS was just coming out, and you know, we got onto that 2007-8. So it's been a long time coming. And I think, you know, startups still have the advantage that they don't have the tolerance level for inefficiency or bad work sort of practices. You get tired, you're done with it, and you find a solution. And the belief that there is a solution for every problem you're facing is the advantage they have. Because as soon as something gets tedious, I Google it, I find the solution. Oh, someone's thought about it, it's there. And I think now that COVID happened, people are starting to be more open to looking for different ways of doing something and believing that it's actually possible, which for me, I think was the biggest psychological barrier.
No, absolutely. And just now to move to the last question, back to you, back to Lewis, and just wanted to touch on really this future of work topic as well as AI. And I think, I mean, the two are connected, and we had a great discussion yesterday, just touching on a little bit of that. But what I wanted just to ask your opinion of is more and more now, the leading organizations, as well as the top entrepreneurs, they're being driven by a clear purpose, in addition to driving value and driving growth. And so from your experience, what you're seeing, one at Accenture, two within your clients that you work with, what are you seeing in the space? And how is that changing organizations? And also, how does that play to AI and digitization?
Great, and I love this topic, so I could go on forever. So you're gonna have to stop me on this one. So let me start with the first part of your question around, purpose and the importance of it. And there's kind of three main ideas that I want to share with all of you. And I'm going to start by using Accenture as an example, and I'm going to link it to what Ryan was mentioning about before. I mean, we've had a purpose for a very long time, which was about, we were all about improving the way works and lives. So improving the way the world works and lives. And that was powerful. I think we've realized that we needed to add something to it. And we've added the following words: by delivering on the promise of technology and human ingenuity. And I think the combination of those two things is what's important, is that, of course, the first part of the promise is technology. So you think about technology, you think about digital, you think about artificial intelligence, that's going to be at the core to improve the way the world works and lives. But it's not enough. Going back to what Ryan was mentioning, you still need the human side. You need the human ingenuity. You need that human new learning and always constantly reimagining and reinventing ourselves. And I think this is a critical part around how do I see the world of digital and artificial intelligence and transformation and innovation and purpose. And it is about joining the promise, so delivering on the promise of that technology and digital and AI at the core of that, plus the human side. Just one of them is not enough, whether you pick the human side or whether you pick the technology side. If you just focus on one of them and forget the other, it's not going to work. So I think that's the first idea that I want to share. The second idea is that I do believe that, going back to purpose, that technology, digital, and applied intelligence, to me, are critical to get us to the best version of ourselves as companies, as individuals. I don't think that we can be the best version of ourselves without that extra help from digital and artificial intelligence. And it is not about all being the same. That's not what digital and artificial intelligence should do. It is about getting to be the best of our best version of ourselves. And let me give you an example around what, to me, this means. And I'm going to use banks as an example. Banks right now sell to savings products, which is great. They sell your savings product because you're supposed to save. Now, to me, what digital and artificial intelligence has to do is, it's not just sell you the savings product, can you actually help me save? It is not about selling the product. And yes, the product has to be there. Of course, that's not going to change. It's not going to go away. But technology and digital and artificial intelligence is about actually getting you to help me become the best version of myself, which is help me save. Not just sell me the product, but actually help me to what the product is supposed to do, which is save better, save more. And it's not about saving the max, because maybe that's not me, but it's helped me to get saved, to get to that best version of myself. And the third observation is that we are seeing a lot more companies believing that purpose is non-negotiable. And it's extremely refreshing to see this. I mean, we launched a project with a South African, well, it's a Pan-African logistics entity. And the intent was to go on, really look at their strategy, look at the operating model, look at technology, look at digital. And I think it was extremely refreshing to see that we started the exercise going back to purpose and actually redefine their purpose, which I think in the past, we would have never even considered really looking at it. We would have gone straight into our purpose. Yeah, no, making money. It was great to see South African entities taking that so seriously and allowing us to go all the way back to what is our purpose and coming up with something that was, I think, was very remarkable. So I think that's the third idea. So as you can see, this is a topic in which I can go on forever, so you're going to have to stop me. On something else that we're seeing, and maybe a South African example around this on purpose. I mean, I think one of the ones that clearly always comes to mind is discovery. And it goes back because, their purpose around, making people healthier and enhancing and protecting their lives. It's been a mantra that they've kept forever since inception. And I mean, we are lucky enough to be partnering with them on a few initiatives around the globe. And to me, the idea of expanding this idea of this purpose, and for example, using it to, how can we use our behavior learning that we have, all the learnings that we have applied from insurance into solving other problems around the world, like climate change. And to me, going around the world together to solve things like how can we improve the behavior of people to drive better decisions around climate change is really inspirational. And I see more and more of this into South African companies that I really, 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 I'm very excited about it.
No, and I want to say, yeah, just maybe to build on that, it's also just given where we are in the world today. I mean, if you don't focus on this as a company, the younger generation, it's not enough. Like, it's not all about the value, because we need a wonderful, we need to look after the climate. We need to look after our broader community. And if we don't look after those things, we're going to be living in these places that we don't want to live in. So to attract those fantastic, people into your teams, the smart, up and coming younger generation, I think without a purpose that's bigger than, to support the value growth of your business, you're just not going to be attractive to those resources. So
I was interviewing somebody that is coming back. I mean, she's playing a lot into the data analytics space, went to London to do the additional learning on this topic, and was coming back to South Africa to work again. And, she's looking for options. And the way in which she was actually attracted to come and work with us at Accenture is that, of course, we do have, applied intelligence and, experience on that and capabilities around the globe. Yes, fair enough. But so do others. The actual main reason why she actually said, okay, I want to work with you is because when we started mentioning the work that we're doing around helping companies actually making the world better and driving purpose, that's still that. Yes, of course, you're going to use digital and you're going to use AI to do it. We will. And she will use that, but she will use it for a purpose, for a reason. So I must admit, I'm very excited to how we can use digital and artificial intelligence and other things to actually make a difference in the world.
No, it's great to see. And also, I think companies, we're being pushed there a bit by the younger generation, which I think is great. And also, as that happens, so the companies are pulling themselves into that same space. So it's wonderful to see this change. But I think maybe just going to call it now, just with the formal questions that we had set up, and we don't have any specific questions from the floor. So just maybe a quick call out to the room. If there is a burning question that anyone has, just put it in the chat box now, and we'll talk through it. But otherwise, we'll aim to close in the next minute or two, and we're just going to go around the room, and with a closing comment from each of the speakers. But really want to say to everyone who joined today, thanks so much. And we'll send through a recording and the transcript of this. And also, of course, there's always the opportunity to get in touch directly with any of the speakers individually. Just drop us a note at Endeavour, and then we will channel the questions through.
Sure.
Okay, but maybe just to start the closing comments, Rapeleng, would you like to go first?
Yeah, you know, as you were talking about all the tech and things, one of the things I found really helpful for people to be able to start adopting and thinking about how they as professionals apply technology into their workplace is that, you know, I find that we've coined a concept called tech fluency that is really around stopping to use the buzzwords 4IR and big data and AI, where it doesn't really inform someone what they are doing in their role, and rather thinking about technology as a mechanism to break a constraint. And when you do that, then you as an accountant or as a lawyer can start to ponder what are, you know, some of the constraints and how I work. And then, you know, understanding rather capabilities of technology, the ability to store infinite amount of data, the ability to recognize patterns, the ability to perceive more information through end devices, etc. And when you understand it as capabilities and opportunities to break constraints, it suddenly becomes more accessible to even non-technical people. And having that sort of shift in conversation, I found suddenly non-technical people feel like they can be part of that innovation journey. So it is possible. It's getting clearer and clearer to us tech people. So slowly but surely we're making it clearer to everybody else too.
No, I want to say thanks. So we definitely, everyone's getting more educated as we go along. So the fluency is improving all around. Ryan, from you.
Yeah, I actually just to sum, I think the digital intelligence journey is actually going to save our species. And the reason I say that is I think we, as a species, we are largely unconscious. We grow up learning to replicate. Our lower brains are all about trying to learn how to operate subconsciously. I often do it. I work and I come home, I sit on the couch and I can't recall half of what I've done. I've driven home without being conscious. I'm engaging with my kids without being conscious. And it's because most of our lives, we asked to replicate. We asked to we're busy, we're doers. And what I think digital intelligence is going to allow us to do is to hand that role over and actually to start learning to skill up our upper brain, the brain that reflects, the brain that is conscious again. That's so hard for us to think and change our behavior and rewire ourselves. And so I really do believe the future of intelligence and human intelligence is not to go to school anymore. It's to actually to become conscious, to learn about ourselves rather than to learn about things and other things. Because actually the more we learn about ourselves, the better we'll be able to add value to the planet. Because we've spent so much time learning about our society's past and just replicating it. And so I really do believe it's quite a paradigm shift that this digital intelligence is important for us. And yes, it's been manipulated, and yes, there are challenges with Facebook, etc. But if we can do this right, we can, as a species, actually spend more time in the conscious realm, thinking about why we do things, the purpose, the bigger questions, and not spending our time in the busy activity of work. And that, I believe, is where we can add an exponential amount of value back into our ecosystems, our societies, and in terms of the health of our social, political ecosystems. We need to think more and do less. And our digital workforces and digital experts are a way for us to offload and to give us the time to do that. So again, I think this is a hugely positive new journey. We've just got to, again, be conscious in how we use it and use it for the right purposes.
Thanks, Ryan. I mean, it's enormously empowering, and like what a great vision for the future. And then, Luis, from your side.
I think I would start with I'm an optimist, and I believe part of being an optimist is just deciding to look at things in a different way. I think, you know, the thing is still the thing. But if you look at it with an optimist perspective, you see the potential instead of the constraints. I think, you know, in this whole thing of tech and artificial intelligence, I think the first thing that we all have to look is apply the right perspective. which should be positive. And then I think we all have to take initiative. And it goes back to a lot of the things that Rapilang and Ryan have spoken about, is that initiative is not just corporates or governments. So is that, what do we do as individuals? And, what do we do as entrepreneurs? And I think not giving the responsibility to others, but taking it into ourselves is extremely important. I don't think we'll get to full potential unless we embrace it, starting from individual. And it goes back to what Ryan was saying, even and how we learn. So those would be my any messages.
Thanks, Luis. And I want to say to the panelists, thank you so much. I don't know, I personally just loved this discussion, really enjoyed it. What a pleasure to talk to all of you and hear what you had to say. So thanks for making the time and sharing your thoughts, and to everyone in the audience. That was, appreciate you coming along. So yeah, we'll close it up, and we'll get the transcripts and the recording through to everyone. So thanks so much, guys.
Pleasure. Thanks for the
Cheers.
invitation.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.